There are moments in life when your greatest statement is not in the words you speak, but in the silence you leave behind. Disappearing is not always an act of weakness. Sometimes it is the highest form of wisdom. It is a discipline, a choice to step away from noise, from entanglements, from those who cannot truly value your presence. And when you choose this path, 9 feelings are stirred in the hearts of others, sometimes painfully, sometimes silently, but always truthfully. First, they feel confusion. The human mind resists change, and absence disrupts its comfort. When you disappear, they wonder what happened. Why are they gone? That confusion is a mirror, showing them how much they relied on your existence without noticing it. Second, they feel loss. Suddenly, the conversations, the laughter, the support are gone. Your disappearance reveals how much of their joy was tied to you, and how empty their own silence now feels. Third, they feel guilt. Absence forces reflection. Questions arise. Did I take them for granted? Did I cause this silence? In your disappearing, you awaken their conscience, sometimes more than your presence ever could. Fourth, they feel fear. Not the fear of you, but the fear of what your absence says. Fear that perhaps you have grown beyond them, that you no longer need what they still cling to. It shakes their sense of security. Fifth, they feel respect. In a world where everyone fights to be noticed, to remain visible, disappearing shows strength. It shows self-control, dignity, and the power of restraint. Some will admire you more in absence than they ever did in presence. Sixth, they feel longing. The heart begins to remember the details it once overlooked. Your voice, your smile, your words. It becomes a melody replaying in their memory. Longing is the soul's way of confessing, I didn't value you enough. Seventh, they feel jealousy. They will wonder where you are, who you are with, and what you are doing without them. Silence breeds imagination, and imagination often breeds envy. Eighth, they feel awakening. Your absence forces them to grow. They realize they cannot depend on you forever, that they must carry their own weight. Sometimes the gift of your disappearance is that it pushes others toward maturity. And finally, ninth, they feel gratitude, but usually too late. They will recall the way you gave without asking, the way you stood when others left. They will see only in your absence the priceless gift of your presence. So remember, this disappearing is not about revenge nor about cruelty. It is about reclaiming your own energy. It is about showing, without words, that your time, your love, and your presence are treasures, not to be wasted. When you simply disappear, you do not punish, you reveal. When you choose to disappear, when you pull yourself away from the constant noise of people's expectations, the first thing they feel is confusion. They wonder what happened, why you left, why the voice they were so used to hearing suddenly became silent. The human mind craves patterns. It seeks consistency, and when that pattern is broken, it feels disrupted. Your absence becomes a question they cannot easily answer, a puzzle they cannot solve. And this confusion lingers because they had unconsciously built a routine around your presence. In truth, your disappearance forces them to face themselves. For what they feel is not only about you, but about the space you used to occupy in their life. After confusion comes the sting of loss. When you were present, they rarely noticed the details that made you valuable. The small gestures, the support you gave without being asked, the stability you offered in subtle ways. But once you disappear, those little things turn into a void. They feel the emptiness in conversations. The absence in the moments when they would have leaned on you. It is only then that they realize the weight of what you contributed. Loss has a strange way of magnifying what was once overlooked, and your disappearance awakens this realization with painful clarity. Then guilt begins to creep in. They replay moments in their memory and wonder if they could have done more, if they could have valued you better, if perhaps their carelessness drove you away. Guilt is a heavy shadow, and it haunts them when silence stretches longer than expected. The words they never spoke now echo louder than the ones they did. In disappearing, you awaken their conscience, making them confront the ways they may have failed to honor what you gave so freely. Fear also rises, not always in obvious ways, but in the quiet insecurity that whispers to them. They fear the meaning of your absence. Did you leave because you have found a higher path, a new strength, or a new circle that no longer includes them? They fear they no longer matter, and this unsettles their sense of importance. Fear becomes a mirror that reveals how much power your quiet exit actually carries. At the same time, there is a growing respect. It is rare in this world for someone to walk away without drama, without noise, without the need for attention. Disappearing silently is not weakness, but strength. It shows self-mastery, restraint, and dignity. Many will come to admire the courage it takes to step back and choose silence over unnecessary battles. Respect grows even if it is spoken only in their hearts. But respect alone does not silence longing. They begin to remember you in ways they never did before. The smallest memories resurface. The tone of your words, the comfort of your presence, the simple way you made things easier without announcing it. This longing is the soul's confession that they undervalued you when you were present. It gnaws at them and turns into a quiet ache. Jealousy can also arise because the mind cannot stay idle in silence. They wonder where you are, who you are with, and what new life you are building without them. In their imagination, they see you in places they cannot reach, with people who perhaps value you more than they did. This jealousy is not always spoken, but it burns quietly, fed by the mystery of your absence. Your disappearance also brings awakening. It forces them to grow, to stand without leaning, to face their own weaknesses instead of depending on you to cover them. Sometimes your absence is their training ground, their chance to mature, to finally carry responsibilities they had always left on your shoulders. Disappearing, therefore, is not only for you but also for their growth. And finally, gratitude arrives often too late. In the silence, in the absence, they finally count the cost of what you were in their life. They realize that your presence was not ordinary, that it was a gift they should have cherished more deeply. Gratitude comes with the sting of regret, for it is born not while you were present, but when you were already gone. To disappear is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of revelation. Your silence speaks, your absence teaches, and your disappearance uncovers the truth they could not see while you were still near. It is not punishment, it is a mirror, and through it they feel confusion, loss, guilt, fear, respect, longing, jealousy, awakening, and gratitude. In simply disappearing, you do not destroy them, you awaken them. When you disappear from someone's life, when your presence that once seemed constant suddenly fades into silence. The second thing they feel after confusion is loss. Loss is not always tied to death or final endings. It is often tied to absence, to the sudden void where something once existed. The human heart is wired to feel the difference between fullness and emptiness. And when you are no longer there, they begin to taste the emptiness you left behind. They may not have noticed the depth of your presence while you were near, but once you vanish, the realization of what they no longer have hits them in ways they cannot ignore. It is like walking into a familiar room and realizing the light has gone out. The space is the same, but the atmosphere is different. This loss is not always immediate. At first, they might brush it aside, pretending it does not matter, convincing themselves that your absence is temporary or that it makes no difference. But over time, they start to feel it in the small things. The conversations they used to share suddenly have no voice on the other side. The comfort they used to draw from your presence is missing, and moments that once felt full now feel incomplete. It could be as simple as a laugh they used to hear, or the assurance they used to feel knowing you were around. Without it, life feels slightly more fragile, slightly more empty. Loss has a way of making people realize value. When you were present, they might not have seen the details. The way you brought stability, the way you offered encouragement, the way your very presence made burdens lighter. But when all of that is gone, those details suddenly become treasures they can no longer touch. What was once normal now feels like a privilege they failed to acknowledge. They begin to replay memories in their mind, searching for the sense of comfort they once had, and each memory reminds them of what they no longer possess. This sense of loss can manifest in many ways. Some feel it as sadness with you, a heavy weight pressing against their chest when they realize you are no longer part of their daily life. Others feel it as restlessness, constantly seeking replacements, trying to fill the gap with distractions, yet never quite succeeding because no one can occupy the exact space you once held. For some, it becomes anger, directed not at you, but at themselves for not valuing you when they had the chance. And yet, loss is not just emotional, it is also spiritual. When you disappear, they sense the withdrawal of energy, the withdrawal of presence, and it leaves them unsettled. You were a source of strength, and now they feel weaker. You were a source of clarity, and now things seem clouded. Your absence exposes how much they depended on you without ever admitting it. The greatest paradox of loss is that it awakens appreciation, but always too late. They begin to count the things they never counted before: your kindness, your consistency, your quiet sacrifices. They remember the times you stood by them when no one else did, the times you offered comfort when the world was cold. In your absence, they finally understand how extraordinary those moments truly were. So when you disappear, loss becomes the loudest echo in their heart. It is a quiet teacher that reminds them that nothing is guaranteed, that presence should never be taken for granted, and that the people who seem constant are the ones we should value the most. Your disappearance leaves them not just with emptiness, but with a longing that teaches them the cost of not appreciating what they once had. Loss is the second feeling, but it often becomes the deepest, because it stays long after the confusion fades. When you disappear, when your voice is no longer within their reach, and your presence no longer fills their space. After confusion and the heavy weight of loss, the next thing they feel is guilt. Guilt is a silent burden that creeps in when the mind begins to replay moments of the past. It whispers questions they cannot easily answer. Did I do something wrong? Did I take them for granted? Was I careless with their presence? Your absence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror they begin to see not only the emptiness you left behind, but also the reflection of their own behavior. Guilt does not arrive at once. At first, they may resist it, blaming circumstances, convincing themselves that your leaving was only about you and not about them. But as time passes and silence stretches longer, their heart begins to wrestle with uncomfortable truths. They remember the times they ignored your kindness, the times they dismissed your words, the moments they allowed ego or pride to get in the way of gratitude. Each memory becomes a sting, each recollection a reminder that they had something valuable but did not honor it. This guilt can manifest in subtle ways. Some will feel it as a restless mind that cannot find peace, replaying conversations in their head, wondering if they could have spoken differently or acted with more care. Others feel it as regret, heavy and unshakable, as if every reminder of you is also a reminder of their failure to value you. They begin to recognize the imbalance. They took more than they gave. They expected without appreciating. They leaned on you without realizing the weight you carried for them. In disappearing, you make them face the truth that perhaps they contributed to the silence. Perhaps they created the very conditions that pushed you away. Guilt has a way of rewriting memory. What once seemed ordinary now appears precious. A smile they once overlooked becomes something they now long for. A simple gesture of support they brushed aside now feels like a priceless treasure. In their guilt, they begin to realize that the things they ignored were actually the most important. And though they may wish to go back and change the past, guilt reminds them that time does not reverse itself. Your absence makes the truth sharper than ever. There is also a deeper layer to guilt. It awakens humility. People who once believed they were entitled to your presence now begin to see that nothing is guaranteed. They realize they had no right to assume you would always be there, no matter how they treated you. Guilt forces them to confront this arrogance, breaking down the walls of pride they once hid behind. In the end, guilt is both punishment and teacher. It punishes them with regret, but it also teaches them to value more deeply in the future. Your disappearance leaves them with the uncomfortable awareness that they could have done better, that they should have done better. And while they may never confess it openly, in their heart they know with you they failed to honor what they had. When you simply disappear, guilt becomes the third feeling they cannot escape. It is the voice in their mind that keeps asking, what if I had treated them differently? Would they still be here? And that question follows them long after your silence begins. When you disappear, after the initial waves of confusion, loss and guilt, something deeper begins to stir in their heart, and that is fear. Fear is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, but deeply unsettling. It is the fear of what your absence means, the fear of what it reveals. and the fear of what it could bring in the future. When someone has grown accustomed to your presence, your words, your support, your guidance, your disappearance feels like standing on unstable ground. They no longer have the certainty they once relied on, and this instability plants seeds of fear within them. The first form of fear is the fear of abandonment. They worry that you may never return, that the silence is permanent, and that the relationship or connection they once leaned on has been cut off forever. This fear digs deep into the human soul because everyone, no matter how strong they appear, carries the hidden fear of being left behind, of not being important enough for someone to stay. Your absence awakens this vulnerability, and suddenly they begin to feel small, exposed, and uncertain. The second form of fear is the fear of replacement. They wonder if you disappeared because you have found others who value you more, who treat you better, who give you the respect and attention they failed to offer. In their imagination, they see you surrounded by new people, walking into new spaces, building a life that no longer needs them. This fear often grows quietly, feeding on jealousy, but at its core, it is the fear of losing their place in your world. The third form of fear is the fear of self-reflection. When you were present, it was easy for them to hide behind you, to distract themselves from their own emptiness by leaning on your strength. But when you are gone, they are forced to face themselves. They see their weaknesses, their flaws, and their dependence more clearly than before. This self-confrontation is frightening because it reveals truths they were not ready to accept. Your absence strips away the comfort of distraction and forces them to meet themselves in a raw and unfiltered way. Fear also manifests in insecurity. They begin to question their worth. Why did they leave me? Was I not enough? Was I unworthy of their presence? These questions shake their confidence, making them doubt their own value. Even if they try to appear strong on the outside, inside the fear gnaws at them, whispering that perhaps your disappearance was a judgment against them. At the same time, fear can create a sense of urgency. They may feel compelled to reach out, to chase after you, to try to pull you back into their world, not out of love, but out of the fear of living without you. The thought of a future without your presence becomes unbearable, and this fear drives them to act in ways they never did when you were still near. Ultimately, fear is a powerful revealer. It shows them how much they truly depended on you, how deeply your presence mattered, and how fragile they feel without it. Your disappearance becomes a mirror reflecting their hidden insecurities, their silent vulnerabilities, and their unspoken attachments. While confusion fades, while loss is mourned, while guilt may be buried, fear lingers in the soul, reminding them again and again that without you, the world feels less safe, less stable, and far more uncertain. When you disappear, after confusion shakes them, after loss empties them, after guilt weighs on them, and after fear unsettles them, something unexpected begins to rise within their heart. Respect. Respect is not always born in your presence. Often, it is discovered in your absence. When you step back without noise, without seeking validation, without the need to prove a point, it speaks a language far louder than words. Silence, when chosen deliberately, carries a dignity that forces others to look at you differently. They may not have admired you when you were always available, But once you disappear, they begin to see the strength in your restraint, and respect takes root. Respect comes first from the realization that disappearing is not easy. Most people cling to attention, to constant interaction, to being seen and heard, to walk away without the need to explain. To choose distance instead of drama shows an inner discipline they did not expect from you. It reveals that your worth is not tied to chasing validation or forcing anyone to notice you. That quiet self-mastery commands respect because it is rare in a world where people fear being forgotten. Respect also comes from the power of boundaries. When you were always present, they may have believed you had no limits, that your time, energy, are you, and attention were endless resources they could draw from. But your disappearance tells a different story. It shows them that your presence was a choice, not an obligation. By walking away, you silently declare, "I will not stay where I am not valued." That message, though unspoken, commands respect because it comes from strength, not from anger. Another reason respect grows is because absence exposes value. People tend to take for granted what is easily accessible. When you were near, they may not have fully recognized how much you contributed to their life. But once you vanish, they start to count what is missing. And this counting leads to acknowledgement. They respect you because they now understand that you gave them more than they ever realized, and your quiet departure made them see it with clarity. Respect also comes from mystery. Disappearing without announcement forces them to wonder where you are, what you are doing, and how you are living without them. Mystery carries power, and power breeds respect. When they cannot predict your moves, when they cannot read your silence, they begin to admire the control you hold over your own life. You become someone who cannot be easily defined with you, and that unpredictability makes your presence, even in absence, command more reverence. Finally, respect is born from contrast. They compare your silence with the noise of others. They see how most people beg for attention, complain, or linger in bitterness, but you chose a higher road. You chose to remove yourself gracefully, with strength and dignity. That decision alone elevates you in their eyes. So when you disappear, respect becomes the fifth feeling they carry. They may never tell you directly, but deep down, they admire your strength, your discipline, and your ability to walk away without losing yourself. Your silence, far from making you smaller, makes you larger in their mind. And in the end, they respect you more for leaving quietly than they ever did for. When you disappear, after confusion shakes them, after loss empties them, after guilt burns them, after fear unsettles them, and after respect begins to rise within them, another feeling slowly creeps into their heart. Longing. Longing is not simply missing someone. It is the age of realizing that something precious is no longer within reach. When your presence was constant, they may not have paid attention to the small details that made you who you are. But once you vanish, those details begin to replay in their memory like echoes that refuse to fade. Longing is the soul's way of confessing, "I did not value this enough when I had it." At first, longing begins subtly. They might hear something that reminds them of your voice, or pass by a place where you once stood, and suddenly an emptiness fills their chest. They remember your laughter, the comfort of your presence, the way your words brought calmness in moments of chaos. Even ordinary things you did, things they barely noticed before, now feel extraordinary in your absence. Longing makes small memories heavy. It transforms ordinary moments into treasures that cannot be retrieved. As time passes, longing grows deeper. They may try to distract themselves, to fill the gap with other people. New conversations or different routines, but nothing truly satisfies. Your absence is not just about what you did. It is about who you were. It is about the unique energy you carried, the way you made them feel safe, understood, or inspired. Longing teaches them that no one can truly replace another, because every presence has its own fragrance, and when that fragrance is gone, the air feels incomplete. Longing also carries regret. They begin to remember moments when you reached out, but they did not respond as they should have. They recall times when you offered love or support, but they did not recognize its depth. Now, in the silence of your absence, their heart replays those missed opportunities, and each memory brings a quiet sting. Longing makes them realize that the things they overlooked were the very things they needed most. This longing is not only emotional, it is also spiritual. Your disappearance forces them to confront how deeply you touched their soul. Perhaps your words planted seeds of wisdom they did not recognize before, or your presence brought a sense of peace they cannot now recreate. Longing awakens in them the understanding that what they are missing is not just a person, but the essence of what you carried into their life. And sometimes longing turns into pursuit. They may reach out, hoping to reconnect, to bridge the gap that has formed. But even if they never act on it, the longing remains inside them, shaping how they think of you and how they measure others. When you disappear, longing becomes the sixth feeling they cannot escape. You. It is the quiet ache in their heart that whispers your name in places of silence. It is the reminder that your presence was never ordinary. And though they may try to move on, the truth remains, once you are gone, a part of them will always long for what they can never have back in the same way again. When you disappear, after they have felt the waves of confusion, loss, guilt, fear, respect, and longing, another powerful emotion rises within them: jealousy. Jealousy does not always announce itself openly. Often it hides beneath casual words or silent thoughts. It is the quiet comparison their mind makes, the restless imagination that wonders what you are doing and who you are with now that you are no longer near. When you were present, they may not have thought much about your choices, your movements, or your connections. But the moment you vanish, mystery surrounds you. That mystery fuels their imagination, and imagination, in turn, feeds jealousy. Jealousy begins with questions they cannot answer. They wonder where you are spending your time, who is hearing your voice, who is benefiting from the strength and energy they once had access to. They wonder if others now see the qualities they once ignored. They begin to picture you smiling with new faces, building new relationships, or pouring your attention to someone else. Even if none of these images are real, their mind creates them, and those images spark the fire of jealousy within their heart. This jealousy is not only about others gaining your attention, it is also about the fear of being replaced. Your absence makes them realize how valuable you were, and jealousy reminds them that if they did not cherish you, someone else surely will. The thought that someone else could now be enjoying the presence they once overlooked becomes unbearable. They may try to dismiss it, but deep down, they feel the sting of knowing that what was once theirs to experience might now belong to someone else. Jealousy also reveals hidden pride. When you were with them, they may have assumed you would always be there, that your loyalty was fixed and unchanging. But your disappearance challenges that assumption. It shows them that you are free, that you cannot be controlled, and that your presence is not something to be owned. This realization bruises their pride, and jealousy grows stronger as they struggle to accept that they were never entitled to you in the first place. In some cases, jealousy pushes them toward obsession. They may try to watch you from a distance, searching for signs of where you are and what you are doing. They may even invent stories in their mind, building entire scenarios around your absence. This obsession is not rooted in love alone. It is rooted in the discomfort of losing control. They cannot accept that you can exist happily without them. And this unsettles their heart deeply. Yet jealousy also teaches them something important. It shows them the depth of their attachment to you, the intensity of their desire for your presence, and the weakness of their own insecurities. In this way, jealousy becomes a painful teacher. Your silence and disappearance become the canvas on which their own inner struggles are painted. So when you disappear, jealousy becomes the seventh feeling that overtakes them. It makes them restless. It makes them compare. It makes them imagine scenarios that may not even exist. And though they may never confess it to anyone, in their heart they burn with the thought that when you disappear, after confusion shakes them, after loss empties them, after guilt weighs on them, after fear unsettles them, after respect grows, after longing aches, and after jealousy burns, a new feeling quietly begins to unfold within them: awakening. Awakening is not sudden like fear, nor sharp like jealousy. It is slow, steady, and transformative. It is the gradual realization that your absence is not only about them missing you, but also about them discovering themselves. Your disappearance becomes a mirror that forces them to look deeper into their own life, to recognize patterns, weaknesses, and truths they had long ignored. At first, awakening feels uncomfortable. They sense a shift within, but they cannot name it. The routines they once relied on no longer satisfy them. Because you are not there to give them the comfort they once drew from you. This emptiness presses them into reflection. They begin to ask themselves questions they never dared to face before. Why did they depend so much on you? Why did they not value you when they had the chance? Why do they feel incomplete without your presence? In seeking answers, they awaken to the reality of their own dependence and immaturity. Awakening also brings clarity about relationships. They start to see that not everyone is constant, not everyone is permanent, and not everyone should be taken for granted. Your disappearance teaches them that people are not possessions, but gifts, and gifts can be lost if not cherished. This realization humbles them. They awaken to the truth that loyalty, presence, and love are not automatic. They must be nurtured, honored, and respected. In this awakening, they also begin to grow. Without your presence to lean on, they are forced to develop strength within themselves. They realize that the things they expected from you, encouragement, support, wisdom, are things they must now cultivate in their own heart. Awakening makes them understand that they cannot always depend on others to carry them. They must learn to carry themselves. Your absence becomes their training ground, and though painful, it becomes the very soil where their maturity begins to sprout. This awakening often comes with a new sense of gratitude. They look back and realize how much you gave, how much you endured, and how much you sacrificed in silence. They awaken to the weight of your presence, and though they may never be able to repay you, the awareness itself changes them. They vow, even silently, to treat others with more care, to never again take for granted someone who offers love and loyalty. But awakening is not only about gratitude, it is about perspective. They start to see life differently. They understand that silence speaks, that absence teaches, and that sometimes loss is the only doorway to growth. What felt like punishment now becomes instruction. What felt like abandonment now feels like a lesson. So when you disappear, awakening becomes the eighth feeling they encounter. It is the moment when the pain of your absence transforms into an inner shift, a new awareness, a deeper maturity. They may not thank you for it openly. Well, I'm with you. But your disappearance becomes the very force that wakes them up to truths they would have never learned if you had stayed.